When Meghan Markle entered the British royal family, the world expected her to follow a centuries-old system of traditions, protocols, and unwritten rules. But from the very beginning, Meghan appeared determined to do things differently. Some of her choices were small, others became major talking points, and together they created a pattern that would eventually raise a much bigger question. Was Meghan Markle simply modernizing the monarchy, or was she challenging an institution that had survived for generations by refusing to change? One of the earliest examples came soon after her engagement to Prince Harry. Royal women traditionally follow a conservative approach to public appearances, including expectations surrounding clothing and formal presentation. But Meghan quickly developed her own style. She was often seen wearing outfits that felt more modern and less traditional than what royal watchers had become accustomed to. To some people, these were insignificant fashion choices. But within the world of royal protocol, even the smallest details can attract attention. Then came Meghan's approach to public interaction. The British royal family has traditionally maintained a certain level of formality when meeting members of the public. But Meghan was often more physically affectionate. She hugged people, she interacted casually, and she appeared comfortable breaking the invisible distance that had traditionally existed between members of the royal family and the public. For supporters, this made her appear warm and relatable. For critics, it represented another example of Meghan stepping outside the established royal style. Then, there was the question of fashion. At the 2018 Trooping the Color ceremony, Meghan appeared in a pale pink outfit featuring an asymmetrical neckline that left her shoulders exposed. The look immediately attracted attention. It was elegant, it was sophisticated, but it was also noticeably different from the more conservative style traditionally associated with royal women at such events. The same pattern appeared again when Meghan attended the British Fashion Awards later that year. Her dark nail polish attracted attention because members of the royal family have traditionally favored neutral or understated nail colors for public engagements. To most people, it was a tiny detail, but in the highly scrutinized world of royal appearances, tiny details can become major headlines, and Meghan seemed to understand something very early. Every choice she made would be watched. Every outfit would be analyzed. Every gesture would be photographed, and every departure from tradition would become part of the larger story surrounding her. But perhaps one of the biggest differences between Meghan and previous royal brides was her relationship with the family itself. Meghan was invited to spend Christmas with the royal family before her wedding to Prince Harry. The invitation was significant because royal partners traditionally entered the family's inner circle gradually. Meghan's rapid integration suggested that the palace was willing to embrace her quickly, but the real changes became even more visible after her marriage. When Meghan and Harry welcomed their first child, Archie, they chose a different approach to how they introduced him to the public. Rather than following the exact format used by previous generations of royals, the couple carefully controlled the announcement and presentation of their son. The christening was also kept private, with limited public access. For some, this represented a modern approach to protecting a child's privacy. For others, it marked another departure from a long-standing royal tradition of allowing the public a closer glimpse into major royal family milestones. Then came Meghan's royal wedding. Royal wedding ceremonies are usually highly structured affairs, following traditions that have evolved over generations. But Meghan introduced something unexpected. She delivered a speech at the wedding reception. It was personal, it was emotional, and it was unusual within the traditional royal wedding format. For many supporters, it was a refreshing moment. For traditionalists, it was another example of Meghan changing the rules. But the biggest story was not any single outfit. It was the accumulation of all these choices. The fashion, the public interactions, the wedding, the way she and Harry handled their family life. One moment alone might have meant very little. But together, they created a clear impression. Meghan Markle was not entering the royal family simply to become another royal figure. She appeared to be bringing her own identity with her, and that identity did not always fit comfortably within the traditional expectations of royal life. At first, many people saw this as a positive development. A new generation, a more modern monarchy, a royal family that was finally becoming more relatable. But beneath the surface, another story was beginning to develop. Because the question was no longer simply whether Meghan was breaking royal traditions. The question was whether the institution itself was prepared to accept someone who did not always want to follow them. And as Meghan's time inside the royal family continued, the disagreements surrounding protocol, privacy, media attention, and public expectations became increasingly difficult to ignore. What began with small choices would eventually lead to something much bigger, a decision that would change the lives of Meghan and Harry, and force the entire royal family to confront an unprecedented crisis. The early controversies surrounding Meghan Markle may have appeared relatively minor. A dress, a hairstyle, a public hug, a private family decision. But over time, the attention surrounding Meghan became much more intense. And eventually, the story moved far beyond fashion and royal etiquette. It became a debate about the fundamental relationship between the royal family, the media, and the public. One example involved Meghan's hairstyle. At various points during her time as a working royal, some media outlets criticized her for wearing her hair in a relaxed or messy style. The coverage sparked debate over whether Meghan was being judged more harshly than other members of the royal family. Critics argued that royal women were expected to maintain a certain polished appearance. Supporters countered that Meghan was being subjected to an unfair level of scrutiny for choices that would have been considered completely normal for someone outside the monarchy. That debate soon became part of a much larger conversation. Was Meghan actually breaking royal rules? Or were some of the rules simply being applied to her more aggressively? Another controversy emerged during Meghan and Harry's 2018 visit to Ireland. During a conversation, Meghan reportedly discussed Ireland's abortion referendum with a local politician. The incident generated criticism because members of the royal family are traditionally expected to remain politically neutral. The episode was relatively small compared with what came later, but it highlighted the growing tension between Meghan's personal identity and the restrictions that came with being a senior working royal. Then came the birth of Archie. Meghan and Harry increasingly emphasized their desire for privacy. Their approach was very different from the traditional royal model, where major family events were often carefully managed, but still designed to provide the public with a significant degree of access. The couple wanted greater control over their personal lives, and that desire would eventually become one of the defining issues of their relationship with the institution. By 2020, the situation had reached a turning point. Prince Harry and Meghan announced that they would step back from their roles as senior working members of the royal family. The decision shocked the world. The couple later moved away from the United Kingdom and began building a new life in North America. But leaving royal duties did not end the controversy. In many ways, it intensified it. The biggest moment came in 2021. Harry and Meghan sat down for a highly publicized interview with Oprah Winfrey. During the interview, Meghan discussed her experiences within the royal family and described feeling isolated and unsupported. Harry also spoke openly about his relationship with the institution and the emotional pressure he experienced. The interview immediately became a global event, but it also created one of the biggest crises the royal family had faced in modern times. One of the most serious allegations involved concerns about the potential skin color of Harry and Meghan's future child. The couple did not identify the person who had allegedly raised the concern. The claim sparked an international debate about race and the royal family. The palace was placed under enormous pressure, and the story became even more significant when Prince William was asked publicly whether the royal family was racist. In an unusual moment, William responded directly, saying that the family was not racist and that he had not yet spoken to Harry about the interview. The exchange demonstrated just how far the situation had escalated. This was no longer a disagreement about royal protocol. It had become a public conflict involving family relationships, race, media coverage, and the future of the monarchy. And the story did not end there. Harry and Meghan continued to speak publicly about their experiences. Their Netflix documentary gave audiences another look into their relationship with royal life. The couple presented their version of events and described the pressures they had experienced. Supporters saw this as an attempt to tell their own story after a year of intense media coverage. Critics accused them of repeatedly profiting from their royal connections while simultaneously distancing themselves from the institution. The debate became impossible to separate from their identities, because even after leaving royal duties, Harry and Meghan remained globally recognized because of their connection to the crown. Every interview, every documentary, every public appearance, every new project, everything continued to be viewed through the lens of their royal past. And that created a difficult paradox. The couple wanted independence from the royal family, but their royal history remained the foundation of their worldwide public profile. Then came the next chapter. Instead of returning to traditional royal life, Meghan began focusing increasingly on her own projects. Her ambitions moved toward lifestyle, media, business, and personal branding. And eventually, the woman who had once entered the royal family as an outsider began building something entirely separate from it. But that new chapter would bring a completely different set of questions. Could Meghan successfully build a global brand without relying on the royal institution? Could she turn her personal identity into a successful business? And perhaps most importantly, would the public continue to follow her after the royal drama was no longer the main story? The answer would begin to emerge with Meghan's next major business venture. After stepping away from royal duties, Meghan Markle and Prince Harry entered a completely new phase of their lives. They were no longer working royals. They were no longer required to follow the daily expectations of royal protocol. And for the first time, they had the freedom to build their careers largely on their own terms. The couple signed major commercial deals, including a reported agreement with Netflix. Their first major projects attracted enormous global attention, but the public reaction remained divided. Supporters believed Meghan and Harry were finally creating an independent life away from the pressures of the monarchy. Critics argued that their commercial success continued to depend heavily on the royal story they had left behind. That tension followed them into almost everything they did. But Meghan eventually began focusing on something different: her own lifestyle brand. The project initially appeared under the name American Riviera Orchard before later becoming known as Ever. The concept centered around lifestyle products and Meghan's personal aesthetic. The brand represented a significant shift. This time, Meghan was not appearing as a member of the royal family. She was presenting herself as a businesswoman and lifestyle entrepreneur. The products and branding were designed around a more personal vision: food, home, lifestyle, and the idea of building a brand that reflected her own identity. For Meghan, this represented something that royal life could never fully provide: complete creative control. Inside the monarchy, almost every public decision was subject to expectations. Clothing was scrutinized. Speeches were analyzed. Public appearances followed established traditions. Even personal choices could become matters of public discussion. Outside the monarchy, Meghan could make those decisions herself. But independence came with a new challenge. Success would now have to be measured on its own terms, not by royal titles, not by palace associations, but by whether the business could actually succeed. And that is where the debate surrounding Meghan's post-royal career became more complicated. Some observers saw genuine commercial potential. Others questioned whether the brand had a strong enough identity to survive in an increasingly competitive lifestyle market. The same pattern that followed Meghan during her royal years continued. Supporters saw innovation, critics saw controversy, and every new project was examined through the history of her relationship with the royal family. Even the smallest business decision could trigger a new round of discussion. But perhaps that is the real legacy of Meghan Markle's time inside the monarchy. She did not simply leave the royal family. She changed the conversation around what it means to be a modern royal. Before Meghan, the public was used to a very specific model of royal behavior. Members of the royal family were expected to follow tradition, maintain distance, avoid political controversy, protect private family matters, and rarely discuss internal disagreements publicly. Meghan and Harry challenged many of those expectations, sometimes intentionally, sometimes simply by living differently, and eventually, their decision to leave transformed the discussion entirely. The question was no longer whether the monarchy could modernize. The question became whether the monarchy could accommodate individuals who wanted to modernize it on their own terms. That is why opinions about Meghan remain so divided. To her supporters, she represents someone who entered an ancient institution and refused to completely lose her identity. They will argue that she brought a more modern approach to royal life. They point to her focus on privacy, her direct connection with the public, and her willingness to challenge traditions that they believe are outdated. But critics see the story differently. They argue that Meghan underestimated the complexity of royal life, that traditions exist for institutional reasons, and that stepping away from the monarchy while continuing to discuss it publicly created unnecessary tension within the family. The truth may be more complicated than either side suggests, because the royal family is an institution built on tradition, and Meghan Markle is a woman who entered that institution with a very different background and a very different understanding of public life. Their relationship was always going to be complicated. Perhaps the biggest lesson from the entire story is that the clash was never really about one dress, or one hairstyle, or one speech. It was about two completely different ideas of what modern royal life should look like. One side believed tradition provided stability, the other believed tradition needed to evolve. And somewhere between those two ideas, a marriage, a family, and one of the world's most famous institutions, found themselves caught in an extraordinary conflict. Today, Meghan and Harry have built a life outside the royal family. They have pursued media projects, business ventures, and a public identity that is separate from official royal duties. But the irony is that their connection to the monarchy remains one of the biggest reasons the world continues to watch them. Their story began with a royal wedding. It continued with a dramatic departure, and now it has evolved into something entirely different. A story about independence, identity, business, and the price of walking away from one of the most powerful institutions on earth. Whether you believe Meghan Markle modernized the monarchy or simply never truly fit within it, one thing is difficult to deny. Her arrival changed the conversation. Her departure changed the institution. And the debate surrounding her legacy is still far from over. Because years after Meghan first stepped into royal life, people are still asking the same question. Did Meghan Markle fail to adapt to the royal family? Or did the royal family fail to adapt to Meghan Markle? Perhaps the answer depends entirely on which side of the royal story you choose to believe.